All right, we are back on. I'm going to be completely honest. Whenever we started this, I was not as ready as I thought I was, so I just needed a second to sort of get everything in order. So, yeah, this is the Random Album Review Show. We are talking about Anti by Rihanna and talking about why it's so awesome, why we think it's so underrated, and what makes it tick. So, yeah, sort of going back to what we were talking about before in terms of Rihanna doing sort of putting things aside, her normal style aside, and just sort of focusing and trying to put her ability towards something a little bit more special. Whenever she sort of started the process of making this album, she wasn't really finding it. She just sort of did it in her typical way that she makes music and just wasn't finding it that fulfilling. So what she ended up doing was sort of renting out a house in Malibu, and she locked herself in there with her team, and they began just writing and composing, sort of putting themselves away from distractions and not focusing on necessarily making hits, although they did make some in the process, obviously. Mm-hmm. And what ended up coming out was all the songs that end up on most of the songs that end up on Anti. There were a few that were made afterwards. But yeah, and she didn't do all of the songwriting on this, obviously, but she did a really good big chunk of it. She did get work from additional songwriters, but you can definitely get the sense, even when you are talking about a person who gets help from other people writing songs, which she's obviously done her entire career, all artists in that genre really do. Even in terms of that, just a growth in lyrics, especially. I think that was one of the more striking things about this album was how much better the lyrics were on this album. And again, even though she's getting help from people, she sort of steers the ship on that. Really, she's the one who controls, here's what I want this song to do, here's what I want this song to do. Yeah. And she is individually writing that stuff. It's more of she's getting help in terms of fixing things and taking the rough draft and turning it into a final product.
Yeah, not with her ideas and anything necessarily even. I mean, probably.
Yeah.
But I'm saying it is Rihanna.
It's her. Exactly. It's her. She's the reason why it's getting done. She's getting help, obviously, but again, a lot of it, even some of the songs were 100% her. We'll sort of get into the famous one for that later on when we talk about Higher. But there's just a certain sense of, there's a certain sense of urgency. I feel like there's a lot more of an emotional attachment to a lot of the things she's singing about.
I feel this is a cathartic album.
Yeah, definitely. We'll talk about it a little bit whenever we sort of talk about and play. The immediate one that comes to mind is Kiss It Better. I mean, that's a song that at its core is material that is similar to material she's done in the past. But what makes that song so different is just the extreme sense of urgency and just the power that she's able to put with that is something that it's the most striking example, I think, on the whole album in terms of just how much she has changed and the people around her, how much they have improved and just what they were able to create with this album as a whole.
Yeah, I'll have to be thinking about that when we listen to it.
Yeah, for sure. That's in terms of at least the lyricism. A whole nother aspect to it is the overall production of this album, which is phenomenal. It is absolutely phenomenal. The sound that her and her team are able to come up with on a lot of these tracks is something that is not really, it's just so special in its own right. Where she's able to pull from a lot of different sounds and a lot of different genres that you wouldn't typically expect from anybody, let alone her. So yeah, that's something we're definitely going to be paying attention to whenever we start listening. Real quick, I just want to check and make sure. Why don't we get real quick while I sort of get this set up, just your overall thoughts and like just sort of your overall opinion about the album, just sort of how you're feeling right now.
Yeah, I guess the first thing that comes to mind when you say that is like, I really think when people think about Rihanna, they think about her older music. They don't think about this album that much. And it's not like they don't think it's a good album, but like Adam said, like it was released on Tidal and around the same time as Lemonade, so those are all factors in that. But it's just, and another thing is, I really think like when she made this album, she was making it just for the music. She wasn't thinking about like what people wanted to hear. I feel like she was thinking about what music she wanted to make.
Right.
You know?
And further on that exact point, I sort of pulled, I have a quote here from her whenever she did an interview with a magazine, sort of talking about how things changed with her sort of writing and creating process with this album, where this is after, again, she's kind of in the creative process of making her original try at the album. She felt what she called numb. And so that's when she began working on what ended up being Anti. And in an interview, she said, quote, it was in that moment that I trusted myself, trusted my ear, trusted my gut, trusted the way that music made me feel. I had no idea how it would be received. Neither was that something I considered. I just wanted to make a body of work that felt right. So again, that goes back to the idea that we've been saying, is that she didn't care. Mm-hmm. She didn't care how it was received commercially, and it really, by her standards, it didn't do that well. Like it wasn't a complete flop financially, which isn't something she has to worry about.
Obviously.
But compared to, honestly, if she would have released it in a different year, compared to how it would have done, like it was the financial stats on it aren't that impressive. Mm-hmm. So,
but
she didn't care, and side of it doesn't show. But the end result is a truly beautiful album that otherwise wouldn't have existed.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even if it didn't do the best, in terms of like making money and stuff like that, I bet it's still like something that she is extremely proud of.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of wanting to make a good album is something that sounds so simple and sounds like fundamentally something that every artist wants to do with every single project they do. But it's a lot more complicated with that, especially when you're in her genre. It's so much more complicated than that. Like, there's so much just pressure surrounding it that, I mean, we could go for hours about different artists that when their careers are done, they say, I felt nothing about the music I made. Because there's so many outside influences, and it's all about trying to make something, it's almost more on the business end of trying to make something that sells and trying to create an image for yourself. With this one, she approached it like an artist in a different genre, almost. She didn't approach it like Rihanna or like other like Taylor Swift would approach making an album, or like, I don't know, other pop icons would approach making an album. She took it from the standpoint as like somebody who's a struggling artist who's just struggling to make money and doesn't care, honestly, but it's just like, I want to make something incredible. Which, again, like I said, the concept of making a good album sounds so simple, but when you're in a position where there's so many other things going on, and then you just isolate yourself from the world, and that's what you're focused on, and you're with a group of people who are professionals, and they put everything aside and try to do the same, this is the result. This is the ultimate result. So yeah, I think that's a good place to sort of stop this initial discussion about the album, and without further ado, let's just start listening to it. So yeah, for starters, this first track features a very, very awesome feature from SZA. The song is called Consideration. I think this one really sets just an awesome tone for the whole album. I remember whenever the very first time I listened to this album, I was listening to this song and I was like, this doesn't sound like a Rihanna album. It really doesn't. I feel like it's a lot different than a lot of the other tracks in the album, but it just sets a nice tone, like that you're in for something special. And you get little senses of that really unique production style, that really improvement on the songwriting. Like lyrically, this isn't the greatest. These aren't the greatest lyrics on the whole album, but you just get that sense of, oh my god, like this is good. She got good. So yeah. Without further ado, we're gonna listen to it. Following, I think we're just going to go right into the second track of this album is a really dreamy interlude called James Joint. It's just like, I think, 1:30. So I think we're just going to roll right into that one as well. And then we'll come back after those two and maybe talk about them a little bit more. But definitely start talking about the next track after that, Kiss It Better. So yeah, here is Consideration and James Joint off of Anti by Rihanna. All right, those were the first two tracks on Anti by Rihanna, Consideration and James Joint. Consideration in particular, as we were talking before, just sets an awesome tone for the album and sort of gives you a sense of what you're getting. And another thing that I forgot to bring up beforehand that I really got just by listening to that a second ago, we talked about songwriting and production, but holy crap, her singing. Her singing on this whole album is a million times better. Yeah. Like, whether she was sort of... Obviously, she was getting some help in some capacity. But just her overall inflection on how she's singing... On that song in particular, during the second verse, she does a lot of really cool stuff with her voice. But even the whole album, the way she's singing and the lyrics that she's doing it with the perfect sort of blend. Again, I keep talking about the word urgency, and it just cuts through a lot more. It's a lot more powerful than if she were singing it in the same way that she's sung stuff in the past before. That's another reason why that makes this album so special. And again, getting it from that song is that she's so much better of a singer with this than in the past. Not that she was a bad singer before. Like, she obviously is one of the more important vocalists when you're talking about pop music in the late 2000s, early 2010s.
Yeah, I feel like on this album she like uses her voice in a way that really shows you what she's capable of.
Absolutely.
And that's what I feel like that's really what makes it different.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the case. Because again, I going into this, I remember the first time listening to it, I was not expecting anything. Like, I really wasn't expecting anything at all. I was just expecting a Rihanna album, or just like a, not that her music's bad before this one, but what we got was something that was so different than what we were accustomed to. Mm-hmm. So when you get you're hearing this amazing ability from her, it's like, oh my god, like, she just kills it.
Yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to bring up earlier, that I kind of forgot to, that I might as well just talk about now. It's interesting that we talked about this album sort of being overshadowed. And the idea, everybody, like, this album won our Twitter poll. We picked 4 very, very good albums that we gave people an option to talk about. And honestly, going into it, I thought Hot Fuss would win for sure. Yeah. But as the Twitter poll went on, it was clear that Anti was going to win. Which I think speaks volumes to the fact that this album is appreciated immensely for its songs. Like, everybody loves the songs in this album. Everybody, in some capacity, loves this album. But we talked about this album being overshadowed because it came out the same year as Lemonade. This album isn't really typically considered in the same like capacity as Lemonade. Like, I remember the year Lemonade came out, I don't remember what time of year it was, but for the rest of the year, that's all anybody ever talked about. Like, was just like, it is a masterpiece. And rarely do you hear people talk about this album in the same light. We both obviously feel that way about it, but rarely is it ever brought up in that conversation, which is one of the main reasons why I was so eager to do this album, especially when I found out we were going to be doing this first. I was very excited, and that's the main reason why, is because it's not one you typically think of, but whenever we brought it to people's attention, they were like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I feel like when this came out, people were like, oh yeah, this is a good album, and kind of forgot about it pretty quickly. Like, everybody recognized that it was so good, but didn't continue to listen to it and
absolutely
think about it.
Yeah. They just exactly, they forgot about it. It was like, it was so different. This whole album, how it was released, how like how the initial release was done, everything about it is so different than what we're used to in these recent times of like, you know, pop album releases. It's so weird to think about how crazy this one was done.
I love it though.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. That's why it's exciting to get in here and talk about it, is because like this is stuff that, you know, this is stuff we usually only think about and talk about, like, you know, when we're inebriated. So for us to be able to come in here and sort of discuss it is really cool and really special. And that's why, again, I can't wait to keep doing this show today and can't wait to keep doing this show in the future with different albums, because we're going to be talking, again, it's called the Random Album Review Show. We're going to be talking about a lot of different stuff. Like, we're going to be talking about some crazy stuff.
Yeah. My mom wants us to do
Prince?
Yeah.
We'll add it to the list. That was another thing. We're going to have to think about what we're going to do. Obviously, we have next week covered, but we're going to think about what we're going to do after that. Because I was talking to people in the radio station about it today, and they were like, we'll have to think about it. I feel like because this one's relatively recent, came out like what, 2016? 2016? Yeah. Came out 2016. Hot Fuss, I mean, it's not super recent. It came out like, it seems like forever ago in a way, but it seems like yesterday in a way. Came out in like, I think 2006, I think, 2005.
2005 or 2006.
Don't fact check me. So they're like relatively recent. So I think the idea of doing a really old one, I mean, I guess not really old, but like a relatively old one that, like, you know, wasn't in our generation, I think that aspect would be kind of fun. And from what I've been talking to people, they really would love to sit in on that. I've gotten positive feedback about the idea of doing an older album. So Prince is definitely one we need to consider. I think Rumors by Fleetwood Mac would be a fun one to do. Yeah. I think Nevermind by Nirvana would be a fun one to do. I think one of the earlier Led Zeppelin albums would be fun, just because I don't, shamefully, I don't know too much about them in the context of albums.
Oh yeah. At all.
I only know individual songs. Like Led Zeppelin is honestly the band where I should know more, but I just don't for some reason.
Yeah, that's the type of music that I don't listen to hardly at all.
So that would be a fun one, because it would be us getting like an initial reaction almost. Like, it would be an experience for us to have to listen to it and sort of dissect it. We might honestly want to save that for later when we get good at this, because I mean, we got to go on now. We're doing well, but we started out pretty sloppy. You know, we started out like a 5 out of 10, but we're getting there now. We're doing better. But yeah, this was a huge break between songs, so we're gonna keep it going, and we're gonna get to our next song, "Kiss It Better," which is honestly another just highlight off this album. This one is like crazy good, and this is the one where I think about just. So sort of overall her change in her songwriting ability and the lyrics on this album, the overall change from previous albums. The immediate one that comes to mind is this song, because I mean, the subject material, it's not bad. Like it's pretty good subject, but it's about sex. It's about, let's have sex, basically. But what she's able to say with that sort of message is so much more, and there's so much going on, and it's so just different. It's so much more different than anything she's done prior, and anything anybody else was doing at the time that this came out. Like, yeah. So, without further ado, we are going to listen to that one. It's called Kiss It Better. It's the third track on this album, and we're going to be talking about some great ones coming up, so keep it locked right here on WSRU, the Random Album Review Show. All right, Kiss It Better, folks. I don't know how you can listen to that without, like, just jamming out. That's just one of the better songs to just listen to and, like, not overthink it. Just let it happen.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We're going to overanalyze it, though, because that's our job. That's our job. Yeah. Another thing with that song that just hits you immediately, the guitars. The use of guitars on that song. Killer. And that goes again to the whole idea of the production on this album. It's so crazy. There's obviously, I can't even describe it. It's a use of, like, soul elements and, like, rock, a lot of rock elements for sure, especially with that last song. But then a mix of an overemphasis of EDM elements in a way where, just in the context of that song, where it's them, the rock and EDM elements clashing with each other, and then the final result is something that's not even close to either of them.
Really?
It's just slow R&B.
Yeah, I feel.
I
definitely feel like it's a lot more rock.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think the use of EDM type stuff and little electronic uses is more of, like, just little sequences, like not even like full melodies, just little little things. And like I said, it's almost clashing, but it makes sense. And like I said, the final result is so different. So what you get from that is a sensory, like, overload, but everything still makes sense and sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Which, when you're able to do that with music, that's honestly when music's able to do that, that's the type of stuff I like. When you're able to do that with a pop album and it still makes sense, it's crazy. Like, I'm barely making sense trying to explain it. And it just works. That's what you have to say at the end of the day. It just works. Don't ask me how. It just works.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And there's plenty of other things going on with a lot of the different songs coming up that we'll be able to talk about a little bit more. Another thing that I thought would be fun to sort of go over with this album, obviously we love it. We've been talking about it for 47 minutes. So we enjoy it. But how did the critics enjoy it?
How did they enjoy it, Adam?
Let's find out. Because on the Random Album Review Show, we plan on doing a like wide array of different albums. Some are just solely based on the fact that they're critically acclaimed. Some are solely based on the fact that we love them and everybody else hates them. Some solely based on the fact that they're just fun and we just want to do. Some solely on the fact that they won a Twitter poll. So with this one, it wasn't necessarily the fact that it's like, well, we've already talked about it. It's not well recognized as being this like important album in pop history. Who knows? This one might end up being like overshadowed going forward. And so 10 years from now, people might not even have ever heard of it. But, so yeah, just looking here, when it was initially released, it was mainly positive reviews. Nothing insane. Sort of like a lot of 4 out of 5s. Pitchfork gave it a 7.7 out of 10, which is pretty good. Rolling Stone 4 out of 5. Entertainment Weekly gave it an A minus. They're usually pretty positive with their reviews. And Metacritic, which sort of takes all the different sites and puts them in a blender and averages it out, put it at a 73 out of 100. So that's sort of the general consensus in terms of how not only critics but users felt about it, was a 7.3 out of 10, 73 out of 100. Just looking at some of these reviews, the person Amanda Petrusic, who I believe is still a member of Pitchfork's staff, I think I see stuff from her occasionally, she wrote that Anti was a rich and conflicted record, at its most interesting when it's at its most idiosyncratic. So if you haven't guessed already, Pitchfork are the snobs of the music world. No, I'm kidding. They're actually very, very, they do some good stuff on that site, and I usually try and follow it. But yeah, Brittany Spanos said that, of the Rolling Stone, said that Rihanna had remade pop music on her own terms with a, quote, sprawling masterpiece of psychedelic soul that's far more straightforward than its tangled rollout. So that's sort of mirroring what we've said so far, in better words.
Big agreement.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's find one more here. Mikhail Wood of the Los Angeles Times argued that Anti was the singer's most experimental album yet, and, quote, remarkably tender at points, highlighting Kiss It Better, which we just heard, and the radical vulnerability. That's a good term that I've been trying to spit out of my like when I keep saying the urgency, there's a huge sense of vulnerability. Oh my god, on this album. That is a good way to put it. Exactly. Especially with that song Kiss It Better. And that term in particular was actually referencing the songs at the end, like the ballads, which is definitely, obviously applicable. Those songs at the end are insanely vulnerable in their lyrics. Yeah. I'm excited to actually get to those, surprisingly enough. Even though they're kind of the boring ones at times, you know. No. The slower ones are kind of boring sometimes. No. But with this album they're fire. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just a lot of positives. Again, an insane amount of positives. Just looking at some of these words thrown around. Extraordinary, you know. Aesthetically personal album. You know, the best album for a reason. So simple. It nothing but positives. Yeah. Yet for some reason, with all of those positives, if you ask somebody what's a more important album in terms of pop history, I hate pitting it against this, but Anti or Lemonade. 9 times out of 10, they're going to say Lemonade. Yeah. And I feel like in a lot of ways, this album has just as much, if not more, positive reception.
Yeah, I
than
feel like
Lemonade. And that's the only example I can think of right now, so I don't mean to say keep pitting, like, Beyonce, Rihanna against each other. That's just the immediate example I can think of.
Yeah, that's the comparison that people make, is between those two. So that's the thoughts that other people have.
I feel like they're the closest two albums in terms of style also at the time they came out. Because there are a lot of similarities between them, if you think about it. Lemonade, one of the things that is so special about it is its use of an insane amount of different genres for a pop album. And the same can be said about this album. Yeah. The production just stretches so far. That's the one thing I think Lemonade does a little bit better than this album, is the fact that you can't argue that it's special how, you know, one song it's like country, one song it's R&B, one song it's rock, but it's still all like a pop album from Beyonce.
Yeah. I was gonna say too, like when I think about Lemonade, I think like pop it's pop music. When I think about anti, I think of more like R&B, hip hop.
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know?
for sure. Definitely. This is
So-
definitely a more R&B, hip hop based album.
Mhm.
I know I keep saying pop, but that's more because the artist is popular.
Yeah, I was gonna say like
That's more because the commercial view of the artist. At its core, you're right. It is a R&B, hip hop, or urban contemporary, as the Grammys would call it. People get so mad at that term. It basically means it's made by black people, and they didn't know what else to call it, so they put it urban contemporary.
yeah. Well, you do
So-
the Grammys.
Oh, we could listen. We could talk about the Grammys all day and why they're terrible. We're not gonna do that.
No, sorry.
That is a conversation for another day. About
Maybe not on the radio.
Yeah, about why the people at the Grammys are idiots. Every last one of them. They are racist and not cool. That was my first time ever
Yeah.
using that, if you couldn't tell. So
Uh-oh, he
I'm
learned how to use it.
so proud of myself. All right, so we've talked enough. We've talked a really long time, actually. Holy cow. Listen, this next track is probably a good reason why a lot of these people want to pick this album on the Twitter poll.
Yeah. I
This
don't think it needs an introduction.
it really doesn't.
No, we don't even need to
We're-
tell you the name of it.
We're not going to overanalyze this one. I mean, not too much at least. We're going to talk about it a little bit, but
Yeah.
we're not going to dive deep into this track because it's not
Not
necessary.
needed, yeah.
Everybody already knows what it is. It's by far the biggest track on this album. I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure it was a pre-album single, and this one sort of became
Yeah, I think
huge.
so.
And again, this is sort of the song that introduced a lot of people to the album as a whole,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
when this song came out, it was big. It was huge. I'm pretty sure it was number one for a long period of time. I remember you could never not hear it, ever. There are some actually very specific things I do want to talk about with the song, but we're going to listen to it first and then sort of discuss that.
Good
And I'm just looking to see how long it is. Okay. Yeah, so as you've already guessed, this is the fourth track on the album Anti. It is called Work, featuring Drake. And we're going to listen to that, and then we're going to talk about it right after we're able to sort of get a sense of how it goes, as if we don't already know. So yeah, here is Work. There's a reason why it was so popular. It's the catchiest song ever made in the history of the planet.
It's already stuck in my head.
Oh yeah.
It's gonna be. It's gonna be.
the
Throughout the rest of this.
The rest of the semester, I'm like, wah. It took me 2 years to forget that song, and now it's back. But yeah, so that was obviously Work off of Anti. As we were talking about earlier, very, very much the song that sort of brought a lot of people to this album. I feel like it was the main single. It was one of the biggest songs of the year. Uses a really cool sort of dance hall sample as the basis of its insanely repetitive and catchy beat. The actual song is "If You Were Here Tonight," performed by Alexander O'Neal. So yeah, that was in 1985 that song came from. So I'm trying to figure out what producer brought that to the table. It looks like it was Boyda and 40. So it looks like Drake's people. Also Harrell, who's that? Q Carroll, who was one of the... So it was mainly Drake's producers, and also Cook Harrell, one of the main producers on this entire album. Actually, he has a piece in every single song. So yeah, but also 40 and Boyda, who are both insane producers. Literally, if you name a hip hop song that has an awesome beat, not necessarily recently it's more Metro Boomin and a few other people, but like 2010 to 2015, one of those two is attached. They're just really great, really great producers. I don't really think they get enough recognition for the work they do. I feel like 90%, that's maybe unfair. Probably 60% of Drake's success in his career is because of those two people, especially when you're talking about 40. 40 has literally been with Drake his entire career and has literally made every single killer beat and every single killer song that he's on. So yeah, they do something really cool with that song and take like a really dance hall sample, and again, sort of talking about Drake's impact on the song. This, I'd say, is probably, I was thinking of this today, this has to be, if anything, a precursor to like the direction that Drake goes in terms of his music over like the next few years.
I see that, I guess.
Yeah, because if you think about it, like in recent years, it's all like just thinking about the work on, what was it called? That, like, it wasn't an album, it was a playlist. More Life. The work on More Life and like Passion Fruit and like a lot of those songs. It was all like, and Views too, with One Dance and stuff like that. A lot of his music in more recent years is all like that sort of like dance hall style and like,
yeah, Work and One Dance give me the same exact vibe.
Exactly.
Now that you're talking about
exactly.
it.
And Work came out way before all that stuff started happening. I can't think of another example where Drake's sort of using that sound before Work came out. So, yeah, I'd say this. Yeah, I'd say this is definitely like a sort of preview as to what Drake ends up doing with what he's done with his career, which I thought was kind of neat when I was listening to it again today. So yeah. And definitely one of the more sort of boppy and moving songs on the album.
Yeah, I agree. Although I have to admit it's one of my least favorites on the album.
You know,
and it's not.
I hate to slap that label on it, but I have to agree.
Yeah, I was thinking about
it's not
that
a bad song.
earlier when I was on my way to work while I was listening to this song. I was like, I might skip this one. I don't know. It's not that I don't like it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know it's a good song. I enjoy it, but like I'd rather hear the other ones. And I'm not sure exactly what it is, though.
I think it's also has a lot to do with the impact of repetition. We've all heard it a million times. So I think that might have an impact to it also. But yeah, no, I definitely know what you're saying. Like, I don't think it's a bad song by any means, but definitely the songs before and after it are definitely what I look forward to when I listen to the album.
I feel like this would, like, if it was my decision, I would like, this song would be an interlude. It would be like a minute long, a minute and a half long. Just like, I get tired of it. I don't know.
All right. That's interesting. I've never thought of songs in that context. I've thought a lot where there are songs on albums where they are interludes, like they're a minute long, and I'm like, why?
Yeah, I'm
you
like,
add
please make
you
more.
add another verse and another chorus on this, and I swear to you, I will listen to it every day. But because it's an interlude and it's a minute long, it's just like, why?
Yeah, I can't, like,
so
it's not enough time for me to get into the song.
Right,
like,
so I've never thought of any music in the context of, oh, this should be shortened, it should be an interlude. But I guess
I think about that, like, all the time.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess it makes sense in the context of this song, for sure. But yeah. Let me see if I have anything else I want to touch on. I don't think so. I'm mainly just excited to get into these next few songs. Because honestly, like, these next, like, oh my god, 5, 6, 7, those 3 might be, like, my favorite songs in the whole album. Or some of them. These middle tracks, I remember the first time I ever listened to this album, these middle tracks were when I was like, okay, this album is awesome.
Yeah.
They're so good. So versatile too. That was the thing I was thinking of today, was like, you can jam out to these, you can sit and do homework to these, you can do the nasty to these. They're so versatile, which is crazy. Usually music goes into like a category where it's either a banger, it's either like a chill song.
Yeah, I could put this on all of those
the
playlists.
These most of the album is all of the above. They're all bangers in a way, but they're also very slow for the most part. They're very slow songs, and another thing that makes the album so special is just how versatile it is. You can literally listen to this album doing anything.
Yeah,
doing anything. But yeah, up next. Track number 5. This one is called Desperado. Pretty big fan of this song too. Also, I freaked out whenever I was researching this album, because I began looking. I just started looking through the Wikipedia and like started looking up different stuff. Freaked out. The instrumental for this track contains basically a sample, an interpolation of another track that I am a very, very big fan of, and I had no idea. That's what the best thing. A lot of people. Yeah, we're going in another tangent. A lot of people hate on hip hop music, especially today. One of the great things about it is when they're able to create something. There are a lot of negatives to using samples. There are a lot of people who do it sort of dangerously, i.e. Eminem and Flo Rida, two immediate examples. But when producers are able to make something entirely different and special using a different track, it's one of my favorite things about the genre. One of my favorite channels on YouTube is literally a guy who takes really awesome hip hop beats, like on different rappers' songs, and he just posts like a short clip of that, and then a short clip of the original song used, and then a short clip of the use in the new song. It's one of the coolest things to look at in music.
Yeah, it's just as artistic as like
it's just
completely making something new.
It's so cool. They can literally either use a song that came out yesterday and just do something completely random with it and cool, or they can take an Arabic song done like 40 years ago that was recorded like in crappy quality with wind blowing and turn it into a banger.
Yeah.
You can do so many different things with it. So cool. And tangent. Anywho, this song Desperado uses a sample from another song I am a huge fan of called Waiting Game by Banks. Off of her, I don't know if it's her debut album, but it was definitely one of, if not her first album. And my favorite song off of that. And my favorite song that I saw her do live. Very, very cool song. And this is a very, very cool song as well. So now that I know it's there, I can hear it. But before I couldn't, which is really neat. So yeah, without further ado, here is Desperado off of Anti. And we're going to talk some more about these tracks whenever we come back. So stay tuned. Desperado, again, includes a sample of Waiting Game I'm a very big fan of. So yeah. As I said, these next few tracks that we're going to listen to are some of my favorite on the album. And this one that you've already heard a short portion of, possibly, if you're listening to us on 88.1 FM, WSRU, the voice of the rock, might actually be my favorite.
Oh, yeah?
Definitely my favorite banger on the album.
Okay.
Definitely my favorite instrumental.
Okay.
Maybe not my favorite song, but favorite instrumental. Which one's crazy? And it's no surprise because, of course, the producer attached to this is none other than Travis Scott. So, no surprise there. In case you're not aware, Travis Scott, in addition to making very good rap music, using his own voice, he's a producer for many other artists, many other artists, and he is incredible in his work of a producer. So many good hip hop tracks under his direction. So yeah, no surprise that I love this one so much. Definitely, like I said, a banger. Anytime it comes, this is one you have to blast anytime it comes on. And again, in addition to that, just a lot of the songwriting on it's pretty cool too. It's very like, again, it has that same urgency we were talking about earlier. That same like,
oh, I forget that phrase.
It was vulnerability. I think.
Something vulnerability. Yeah.
This isn't so much vulnerability anymore. It's more just like middle finger. Middle finger to you.
Yeah.
Again, it's a banger. And just looking here, I keep pulling up the credits on the album. I'm looking at the writers. One of the writers credited is The Freaking Weeknd.
Huh.
I'm wondering, I wish it would specify. Because that could either mean he helped with writing the song, or that could mean there was a phrase that she sort of used that's similar to a phrase The Weeknd said. But yeah, so I don't know. We'll assume that The Weeknd worked on the album too. So The Weeknd helped with.
Surprise me.
The Weeknd helped on the song. Oh yeah, no. A lot of these artists look out for each other.
Aw, that's cute.
It is cute, honestly.
I love it.
A lot of them help each other in a lot of ways that go beyond just, I'm gonna do a feature on your song. A lot of them help each other in a lot of different ways. Sometimes they don't even end up on the final project.
I feel like they have like a community. They're a community.
Oh, definitely, 100%. You definitely get the sense of that.
That makes me happy. I love community building.
Yeah. Love the community.
The idea of people being part of communities.
Yeah, love being a part of the community of WSRU 88.1 FM.
Oh, cute.
Cute stuff. Enough cute, though. We're about to listen to a banger.
Ew.
Did not like that. So, here is Woo. It is the sixth song. Woo! It's the sixth song on the album Anti. So, yeah. Here you are. Woo! That was Woo. Great one. Just a banger. Just a great track to listen to. Again, very versatile. You can listen to it doing anything. What I love about this album so much, among other things. So yeah, good time. Mm-hmm. Up next, we have another one of the. I feel like this is almost the second biggest track on this album. I could be wrong. It could be.
I agree with that.
It could be "Kiss It Better" or this.
I
think
right now it's this. It fluctuates probably, but like...
Yeah, a lot of people were digging this track around the time this album came out. We're talking, of course, the next track, Needed Me. Again, another fantastic track on this album. An ultimate sort of... some reading up on some stuff and just thinking about the lyrics. Ultimate boss bitch anthem.
Absolutely.
I myself am not allowed to swear on air, so to anybody who was on behalf of WSRU, I apologize. The views and opinions expressed by the DJs of WSRU do not necessarily reflect those of the Student Government Association or the Council of Trustees of Slippery Rock University. My apologies, even though nobody out there is probably offended because this whole album has been swearing. But I myself am typically not allowed to swear, so I do apologize for using that word. But yeah, this next track is the ultimate boss anthem. and just a very, very empowering track, and very like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a feminist.
It's a very feminist song.
Strong feminist.
Not even
song, yeah.
even beyond it being a feminist song. It's just like overall, regardless of what gen you are, it's a take no song.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like
empowerment.
Definitely.
Empowerment, yeah. But definitely because
like regardless.
I guess I'll talk about that after we listen to it.
Yeah. We can talk more about it after we listen to it for sure.
Yeah.
Just a very like, despite you thinking what or feeling how you feel, or despite what you say, like this is a two-way street, possibly even more a one-sided street.
Yeah.
Of you needed me. Yeah. Sort of clapping back on an aspect of a controlling other.
Yeah.
Another thing that makes the song so cool, in addition to it just sounding cool and being an awesome song. But yeah, we'll talk about it a little bit more once we hear it. This is Needed Me again off of Anti. Needed Me. Just an awesome, awesome, awesome one off of Anti. Definitely very empowering, as we said.
Yeah, it's so empowering. It even makes you want to sing along. I was just saying that.
Exactly.
I was thinking like, wow, this is a good song to like sing in the shower or in your car and just like
absolutely
let it out.
Just exudes confidence. Like so much confidence in one track. That's definitely one thing I enjoy about Rihanna in this album, and just as a whole and as a person, is there's so much confidence there. Like it's weird. Like you just get a direct sense of her overall sort of confidence in herself.
Yeah.
In a way that's not like annoying or like too much.
Yeah, I feel like it's like effortless for her. She makes this track sound effortless.
Right.
And like she's so like, she's just doing what she does best.
Right.
And
she
killing it.
She exudes confidence in a way that is more like I believe in myself because all people should believe in themselves. It's more of that. It's not like she's like this terrible person who's like, I'm the best and so and so can go off. It's more of just I believe in myself, you should too. Yeah. And that's a lot of her personality as a whole, if you just look at everything she's done, especially recently. I mean, she hasn't released music recently, but just in how she carries herself. It's very just like all the other stuff that doesn't matter, I'm not going to let it affect anything because why should I? Yeah. So yeah. One of the cool aspects of her and one of the cool aspects of this album and sort of the different themes on the tracks. So yeah. Yeah. Up next we have a nice little interlude, I guess. It's more like a 2-minute song, but if we're talking in terms of like best to worst, it's probably my least favorite on the album. I'm not saying it's bad, but I just don't really have anything much to say about it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like it's just there for me. Yeah,
it's sort of an interlude. I feel like it would almost be weird to go from Needed Me to Same Old Mistakes, which we're obviously going to talk about here in a second because, oh my God. So it's nice to have, I guess, a little transition period. This is almost the bridge that connects the first half of the album to the second half of the album. We're past the true halfway point, but in my head, like, this is the connecting point. The rest of this album is the second part of the album.
Okay.
Like,
I'd see that.
All the bangers and all that are the first half, and sort of the last one is Needed Me, and then this interlude's there, and then the rest of it is sort of, when we talk about the end of the album, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with
because
that.
certain
I feel like that's why I don't think about it much.
Right.
That's in between.
certain tones of the album definitely shift as soon as we're done with this track.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we'll quit talking about it. We'll give you that little interlude, and then we'll talk about the next track, which obviously I can't wait. So yeah, here is Yeah, I Said It, which apparently was received some help in production from Timbaland, who is no stranger to production and popular music and making some bangers. So yeah, here is Yeah, I Said It. All right, nice little interlude. Not too bad. Honestly, it's better than I remember it. So maybe I was a little unfair in my previous sort of. It's not that important. I mean, it really isn't, but like, it's still an alright track. Not terrible.
I still feel like I'm not gonna like listen to it.
I'm not gonna.
I'm listening
I'm not
to
gonna
the whole
find
album,
it.
but yeah,
I'm not gonna seek it out for sure.
But it's just as good as the rest of the album.
Yeah,
So
it's still a pretty nice song. You know, you gotta have some. If you're gassed in terms of making like a beautiful album, you can't just sort of clump everything together. You have to have some in between tracks that sound solid that don't really have too much,
yeah, if
out there meaning.
Yeah, if every song is like amazing and like every song can't stand out,
Right?
Because then they're just gonna be like, oh, they're.
It has
all
to have
okay.
a flow. It has to have a flow to it. So
Yeah.
if you have the choice between putting like another incredible track in terms of songwriting, in terms of production, but it doesn't fit the scheme of the album, like it's useless. It seems clunky.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that track helps alleviate the clunkiness. That track is very much in the same style as a lot of the other songs in terms of production, and it just kind of solidifies the tone of the album, which is important. It shows a ton of maturity. We can talk about this all day, but like, holy crap, like Rihanna just woke up one day and decided, oh, okay, I'm so intelligent in terms of how I'm going to make this album. Like, again, not that her music's bad or that her music before it was bad, but it was just like all of a sudden her and her team were just got like 50% smarter in how they made this. We can talk about that all day. So up next we have a track that I know a lot of people, whenever I talk about this album, even when I was talking about this album in the radio station, a lot of people were kind of like, I mean, a lot of the members of WSRU who have very good music taste. I'm not judging. They have amazing taste in music, but a lot of their taste typically skews more towards the rock end of things. It's a radio station. What are you gonna expect? And honestly, in most cases, I am too. So whenever I said we were doing this album first, there was a lot of crickets. And then when I said Hot Fuss next week, they were like, oh, lost their minds. But anywho, the people who were in the radio station that did appreciate and know this album, whenever I said I was doing this album, a particular few of them were like, there's so much you could talk about. And then this was the track that they brought up that they love. This is a lot of people who love the album as a whole and not just the individual tracks. This next track is the one that they typically go to. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar, but for those of you who aren't familiar, we're talking about the 9th track, Same Old Mistakes. It's 6 minutes and 37 seconds long. By far the longest track on the whole album. And this was definitely the one. I know I've said this a few times, but this was definitely the one where when I listened to this song for the first time, like all the way through, there was an overwhelming sense of, I honestly feel if I were to rate this album out of 10, I would honestly put it at a 9. That's how good I think it is. I know a lot of people might think it's not that great, but like that's honestly how good I feel it is, and this is mainly why. When I listen to this album, or when I listen to this song, Same Old Mistakes, I was like, oh my god. This artist continues to set the tone. She continues to maintain smart themes, important themes, insane lyricism. And this song, even though it had the least work to do on it, I'd say, in terms of it, she didn't have to write it, she didn't have to produce it. All she had to do was sing on top of it. It shows that she knows what she was doing with this album. Overwhelmingly. So for those of you who don't know, because I didn't always know this, Same Old Mistakes, a lot of you might already know, but for those of you who don't, it's actually not a song that was created on this album. It was it's a cover. And actually, like, not even so much of like a cover, it's like a copy and paste where she sort of sings over. It's a karaoke almost. Which, I'm not going to lie, when I first found out, it made me feel some type of way. Because I was thinking of that in that other context, and I was like, what? But Tame Impala, which, whenever you realize that's the artist, and you hear the song again, you're like, oh, it makes sense. It sounds like a Tame Impala song. Tame Impala released this song. This is actually the album closer on Currents, their most recent album. Which, that album we might honestly consider doing at some point. Probably later. Because we could talk about a lot with that. It's very, very spacey, psychedelic, really good album. Took me a long time to appreciate.
Yeah, it gives me a weird vibe. I don't really appreciate it enough.
And I was the same place you were, like, months ago. It takes a long time, at least for me, to fully appreciate it. And now, finally, I'm like, okay, like, this is good.
Yeah. Okay.
So, anywho, Same Old Mistakes it has a longer title, I think, on the album. I can't remember. But it was actually the closer on Currents, which came out before this album came out. Rihanna heard it one way or another. I'm not sure exactly how. But she heard it and said, I have to have this. She's like, I have to have this on my album. Because it's insane that it's an entirely different genre. It makes, like, it has no ties to her, especially her earlier stuff. It has no ties whatsoever. But it fits so seamlessly in this album. It's insane.
The name of the song on the Tame Impala album is New Person, Same Old Mistakes.
New Person, Same Old Mistakes, yeah. Right. So, and if you look that up and listen to it, it's literally the same song. Except instead of Kevin Parker singing, it's Rihanna. But Rihanna heard it and literally was immediately just like, I have to have this on this album, which is so admirable because, again, it sounds nothing like before this album came out. In the context of that, before this album came out, it sounds like nothing like a Rihanna song.
Yeah,
but it fits so well in the context of this album. The lyrics make so much sense in terms of the context of this album. So she contacted Kevin Parker, who did a lot of the work on Currents by himself, by the way. I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for that. He did most of that album by himself, which is amazing. And we're finally starting to see some of his work on other projects. He's working with a lot of different artists in different genres. A lot of rap artists, and it's good for him. He deserves all the credit he gets. He's great dude, great musician. But anywho, let me exactly pull up here. Let me see what this says. So yeah, most of the album was recorded in the same location, in the same studios, except for this song, which was recorded in Paris. And it was I believe it was after a lot of this album was already done. Rihanna's team had contacted Tame Impala, aka Kevin Parker's management, and informed them that Rihanna loved the song, and they just wanted to know if she could re-record the track for this album because she felt it fit so well. And Kevin Parker agreed and gave her permission to do basically whatever she wanted with it. He basically gave the green light to go ahead. And the second he heard her version of it, he was so impressed. He said, "We're all really happy with how the song turned out. Absolutely love it." And I think it's neat because rarely do you see artists do that now. I mean, he gets credit on the album credits in terms of being the songwriter and overall, person involved in that song.
Mm-hmm.
But rarely do you get a moment where one artist says to another artist, "Oh, you think this fits in the context of your vision? I will let you use my art in any way you see fit."
Yeah, and it
That
shows
rarely
that
happens.
they're like really thinking about it as art. They're thinking about the art, not about
Exactly.
like, oh, that's mine. Like, you can't use it
Right.
because I'm making money off of it, and I don't want, like, that's me.
Right.
Or like,
And I feel like
being
if
possessive
if
over
he
an art
would have,
form.
even with that being said, even if he would have said no, you can't really fault him.
Yeah.
It's a weird concept to
Yeah.
let somebody take your song. Literally, again, they didn't make any changes. She just sings over it. It's karaoke. So it's very weird for artists to do that. So you couldn't
Yeah.
blame him for allowing that. And it's just neat. You rarely get that where it's very neat, because I'm sure a lot of people who record albums will hear like songs at some point where they're like, "Oh my god, I wish I would have made that." Everybody has that. Everybody has that where they hear something like, "I wish I would have done that."
Mm-hmm.
So this is somebody doing that and realizing this fits so well into the context of what I've made. The album is really good without this song, which was mainly what the album was before all this happened. But she went out on a limb and said, this solidifies what I'm trying to accomplish with this, and I want to include it. And I think the result is really beautiful, and I hope you all think so too. The song is called "Same Old Mistakes." It's the 9th track of Anti, and I believe as soon as this one's over, we get into the ballads, the slow stuff, the emotional stuff. So yeah, be sure to stay tuned for that. Here's "Same Old Mistakes" by Rihanna, featuring the production of Tame Impala, aka Kevin Parker. Oh, so good. That was "Same Old Mistakes" off of Anti. Just really insanely powerful. Just the instrumental. Again, it wasn't created in the context of this album. It wasn't initially created for the context of this album, but just the fact that the end result is just so special in the context of the album as a whole is really cool. Yeah. Is definitely one of my favorite songs on the whole album. I also just think her vocals on it adds a lot. Not that the original version isn't great, but I think when I think of this song, I do think of it in her voice and not Tame Impala version for some reason. Even though the instrumental is very Tame Impala-esque.
Yeah, I was listening to this in the car. This came up like on shuffle on a playlist earlier in my car, and I was like, wait, what is this? Because I didn't recognize that it was this song, because I was like, this sounds like, I don't know, not Rihanna.
Yeah, no, it sounds so not Rihanna. That's why when I first heard it, I was so shocked. I was like, holy crap. It just adds further to the fact that like this album is so special in terms of her ability to make it.
Yeah, that like little element makes it like really impacts the album a lot, I feel like.
Yeah.
And shows a lot about her as an artist.
Yeah, definitely. Earlier in the planning of this sort of episode of the Random Album Review, I was planning on, and this might be something we try and do in the future with other albums, I was going to try and do some research on the album cover and sort of talk about the symbolism behind that. But I forgot / we're already at midnight and we still have 4 songs to get through. So, we're not going to really go through that. Just briefly, it's a very pretty album cover. It's got Braille. Plus, it's cool because all the physical copies of this album, whether it's CD, vinyl, whatever, they are all in perforated Braille. Like 100% Braille.
Yeah,
like a blind person could pick it up and read whatever. Actually, there's somebody wrote. I have to find it. I forget what exactly the Braille says.
Yeah, I remember being in like FYE or somewhere.
Yeah.
Around the time this album came out, just like looking for CDs to play in my old 2003 Subaru Outback that only had a CD player. So like, and I came across this one and noticed it had Braille on it. I was like, wow. That was just, I don't know, it's just really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, hang in there. I want to pull up what exactly the album says, because I know there's a long passage that's written on the front, inside, and the back of the album in Braille. And I think there might be more also with the vinyl edition, which I did have at one point, but I sold, regrettably. Otherwise, we'd be listening to it on vinyl. In future episodes of the Random Album Review, we're going to try and do most of these on vinyl. If not that, then some physical copy. Just because, I don't know. It's not that it's going to sound better. It's just going to make it easier for us in terms of like stopping and playing. In terms of vinyl, it's definitely going to make it sound better. 100%. Hot Fuss, I have a really crappy old vinyl album of it, so I'm debating whether or not we should play it off of that. We probably will, just because. Why not?
If not, I have a CD.
You have a CD of it? We might just
been in my car forever.
We might just do that, just because the CD players in here, they automatically stop between tracks. That would make it super easy.
That's convenient.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have a CD of this in my car, but it's a burnt copy of it. So I wasn't sure if it would be scratched or not. So I was like, it'd probably be better if we just listened to it on Spotify. Okay, I gotta stay focused because I want to look this up before we get to the next track. Because it's sort of...
Okay, I'm on Mic.com. It's saying a single poem divided into 2 parts spreads across the covers.
Wait. Does it... Is it the If They Let Us?
Yeah.
Okay, you can go ahead and read that then. So just so you know, this is... if you ever look at a physical copy of this album, whether it's a CD, vinyl, whatever... it's in, like if we were saying, it's in physical Braille. If a blind person were to pick it up and knew Braille and touched it, they would be able to sort of read this. So go ahead with what that reads.
Yeah, and this poem is If They Let Us. That's written by Chloe Mitchell, a poet whose work has been heard previously on Kanye West's The Blame Game. And it reads, I sometimes fear that I am misunderstood. It is simply because what I want to say, what I need to say, won't be heard. Heard in a way I so rightfully deserve. What I choose to say is of so much substance that people just won't understand the depth of my message. So my voice is not my weakness, it is the opposite of what others are afraid of. My voice is my suit and armor, my shield and all that I am. I will comfortably breathe it in until I find the moment to be silent. I live loudly in my mind so many hours of the day. The world is pin-drop sound compared to the boom that thumps and bumps against the walls of my cranium. I live it and love it and despise it, and I am entrapped in it. So being misunderstood, I am not offended by the gesture, but honored, if they let us.
So yeah, so applicable to this album as a whole. And you understand why she wanted that on there. So yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah, very, very cool. Music is so awesome for all of the reasons that we've discussed. So yeah, with that, we're gonna go ahead and keep the songs coming. This next one is obviously not as like powerful, I'd say, as the last track, but still pretty cool. I actually hated this song whenever I first listened to the album, but the more I listen to it, the more I realize it's pretty cool. It's definitely a different sound than a lot of the other tracks. You mainly get the acoustic guitar and the sort of, just a different sound. But some really cool songwriting on it. So yeah, this is Never Ending. This is the 10th track on Anti by Rihanna. Stay tuned and we'll talk about more. All right, that was Never Ending, the 10th track on Anti. Very, very beautiful. It's obviously the most... it and Higher, I'd say, would be the two most simplistic instrumentals on the whole album. Which is crazy because, I don't know, like an hour ago we were talking about like Travis Scott produced like banger. And now we're talking about like an acoustic guitar and a thump for the percussion. Like, crazy. This girl, I don't want to say lost her mind on this one, but she just went nuts. She absolutely, like, holy cow.
Yeah. Very
artistic individual, Rihanna, which a lot of people I feel like don't either acknowledge or don't really understand. Keeping on with that and keeping on what we were talking about earlier, we're just sort of looking up stuff about the album to sort of talk about them, and Sam had come across whenever Rihanna had announced the album title and the idea behind that. Is that what it is?
Yeah. So she posted this like picture on Instagram, and it's basically just like a book definition of anti. Oh my gosh, and this opened up on a different page. Okay. And it says like the definition: noun, a person opposed to a particular policy, activity, or idea. And then underneath that it says like her intentions with it, and it says like talking about her in the third person, but it says in her collaboration with Roy Nakam, Rihanna has changed the history of album art. By continuing to follow her own instincts, her work strives to make an impact by doing the very antithesis of what the public expects. And I feel like that just sums up like a lot of what we talked about.
Absolutely.
So like, yeah, not what the public expected, not what they were like, oh yeah, new Rihanna album, like this is what it's gonna be.
Exactly. I was just gonna say, like, I had said earlier, the idea of wanting to make a good album seems very simplistic and very like, something that everybody would want to do by default. Yeah. But there's a difference between what she has done in the past and what most artists in the pop, hip-hop genre do when they're releasing albums, and this. The amount of thought that was put into every single aspect of this album is overwhelming. Like, it's overwhelming how much personal attention and thought to detail that was put into the messaging of everything about this. Mm-hmm. It's so different than... I want to explain it without, like, name-dropping people who make crappy music, because really it's all subjective. Everybody likes a different type of music. But there are definitely... Everybody knows of certain artists who, just put out songs and hope they stick. And the album is just a collection of songs that they made. There's no theme behind it. And so when an artist is able to sort of bring up multitude of different ideas in the context of an album and have an entire album theme that's this well thought out, it's crazy. We're going to talk about Hot Fuss next week by The Killers. And listen, that album is a masterpiece. We're going to have plenty to talk about with that album. But in a way, that album isn't as cohesive as this one. Just for that sole purpose. Just for that sole purpose. It's a masterpiece. It's a rock masterpiece. And we're going to get into a lot of the reasons why next week. Just for the fact that, the different ideas in the lyrics and some of the stories it's telling. And a lot of the instrumentation is, a lot of the same type of stuff. But in terms of cohesiveness and just in the context of an album and a project with this much thought, it's not even close. And that's not to no fault of their own. They did the best they could. That was their debut album. We're gonna.
I always forget that.
We're gonna. Yeah. Oh, believe this was
Like-
this was the stuff I was thinking of today, and we're gonna talk about it next week. That was their debut album. I'm not gonna talk about it too much right now because I do have a lot that I want to say on that idea alone.
Yeah.
But a lot of these songs were being made off of the cuff. There's a trilogy, a sort of story that they're making with 3 of the songs in particular. 2 of them are on the album and one of them is not. It's on a B-side. But the lyrics of the album don't really have a flow. The album itself has a nice flow to it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the idea behind the album, it doesn't really have that much of a flow.
Mhm.
Again, it doesn't have to be a beautiful album. We're going to talk about a lot of different albums through the course of this show. And a lot of them are going to be good for different reasons. This is one that's special because of how cohesive and how much thought is put into every aspect of overall ideas of it.
Mhm.
And again, it's so cool because it's one that nobody thinks of in that context. Like, nobody thinks of it as a total package work of art.
Yeah. That's
Which
exactly what it is.
Is the perfect reason as to why this was our first one to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Art is beautiful. And so is music. And so is Rihanna.
Retweet.
Yeah. See, speaking of Rihanna being beautiful, like I said before, I used to own this vinyl, and in addition to all of the physical copies having the Braille, which is really neat, the vinyl packaging on that thing was one of the best I've ever owned in my life. It's a trifold. You open it up, and it contained, and this was just one that I bought from a record store. Like, this wasn't like a special edition or anything like that. This was just one that you bought. This was what they were selling. You open it up, and out comes 5 I forget what they're called. I think phonograph. They're like phonographs or something like that. It's a word like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anywho, they're the size of like the LP cover. They're pretty
Okay.
they're pretty big, and they're made on really nice paper. And there are 5 of them, and they're all just her posing like nude. And then the inside packaging has more Braille. The whole design of it's beautiful. Like, again, the amount of attention that she put into this.
It's really her whole self in an album.
Yeah. And I feel like people, like, I don't know. I can't say what people think of Rihanna and what people think of other, like, artists of her magnitude. But artists of her magnitude, like, I don't know. She definitely wasn't sitting there when when this was being done, and she wasn't just sitting there texting like, yeah, do whatever, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, she had a vision, and she had a piece in every single aspect of this, and just the amount of effort alone is just so admirable. Even if you don't like the album as a whole, like, this girl worked,
Yeah, true.
earned the smallest amount of money she's ever made on an album. But yeah, we're reaching sort of the last 3 tracks of the album. We're almost done. We're way over time, but you know, there's no show after us. If they were, I would judge their decisions, because that's crazy to have a show at midnight on a Thursday. So this next track is one that you said was your personal favorite on the album.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
That's my fave.
it's a good one. Really great song. In terms of just, yeah, great ballad. It's a great ballad, is what it is.
Mm-hmm. It also flows seamlessly into Higher.
Yeah, of course. This whole end of the album is very, again.
I love when albums
yeah.
try to connect the songs.
Again, she put a lot of thought.
Musically like that.
She put a lot of thought into how this album flowed. And yeah, this whole, like I said, this whole second half of the album is a lot of the slower stuff and the more methodical and more like emotional stuff. And this is no exception, this song. And as I was telling you earlier, I saw her do a live performance of this song, and it was really, really beautiful. I can't remember. It was some award show. I can't remember exactly which one it was. Maybe it was the Grammys. Back when I actually used to care and watch the Grammys before I was like frustrated and tired of them. Anywho, she did a performance of this and it was phenomenal. She absolutely killed it. So yeah, it's a really special one on this album, and we're about to listen to it. Here is Love on the Brain. This is the 11th track on Anti, 11 out of 13. So we got a few more and then we'll call it quits. But before then, you're going to want to keep it locked right here on 88.1 FM, WSRU, the voice of the rock. That was Love on the Brain, the 11th song on Anti. And yeah, fantastic performance by her on that one.
Just makes me want to waltz around.
Exactly. It's a great like, yeah. You know, the more I think about it, we were talking about this whenever we were off the air, but the more I think about it, you could consider it 3/4. I know I said you wouldn't, but you could. It is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Because 6/8's more of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's usually quicker. That's a very waltzy one, and most waltzes are in 3/4.
Ah, you're right. You got me there.
Well, no, you're the one who said it. I'm telling you, you're right.
No, I was. I don't know. I was like, is it 6/8 or 3/4? Do you think?
All that garbage is up for interpretation.
True.
It's a bunch of snobby people have to decide. No, this is right and this is why, and then, yeah, people. Mm-hmm. Anywho, we are obviously reaching the end of the album. Just for the sake of time and to make sure that we don't go over, because we've obviously gone over our show time. We were supposed to end at midnight, and we're going over that. It's 12:20 now. But we are trying to record and post this online. So for the sake that we don't run out of CDs, basically, because I don't want to put in a third CD, I think we are just going to listen to the last two without a break in between. Because I think the last one's relatively, or even the next one's pretty short. It's only 2 minutes long. But obviously one of the more important ones on the album. So we're going to talk about these two real quick, and then we'll listen to them, and then we'll talk about overall feelings of the album, and we'll call it a night. So the next track is a lot of people's favorite song on the album for the sole point that it proves how genuine and how I don't know, genuine and spontaneous music can be when you're somebody like with Rihanna's talent. Mm-hmm. Everybody already knows. For those of you who don't, when they were in the process of creating this album, Rihanna and one of the main sort of contributors who had a huge impact on this album. I don't want to get his name wrong. James Fauntleroy. He probably, next to Rihanna, he probably had the next biggest impact on this album as a whole. He was there for the entire step of the way. The second track, James Joint, it's his name that it's referencing. He was the right-hand man with Rihanna in terms of the composition, the songwriting, in terms of making this album happen. So, yeah, Rihanna and James had begun with a session with a particular songwriter, B.B. Borley. And basically, according to Rihanna's quote here and what everybody kind of associates the song with, she said, quote, "We just said, you know what? Let's drink some whiskey and record a song." And that's what they did. Rihanna had an idea behind what she wanted to do and realized for this to be for it to have its full powerful impact, I need to be drunk. Which I applaud, because this basically takes the idea of songs like Marvin's Room and other like the idea of taking like a drunk voicemail song and like, I see that and Raise You, I'm gonna actually get really drunk and record this and make it beautiful. Because there's no way that
That's how I'd do it.
It's the most authentic way by far, but there's no way getting really drunk and going into a professional recording studio and having to do a million... I mean, I don't think it took that much time to record because it's so simplistic, but the process of writing a song is very, very just time-consuming and attention-consuming.
Yeah.
So...
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. So... It's very ballsy, lack of a better word, for Rihanna to do that. Especially when we're talking about an album, as we said before, she put so much attention into and wanted to make sure there were very little flaws, obviously. And honestly, there were no flaws. Because the song has genuine... It's genuine. Her voice very noticeably cracks. But that's the intention. It's very much, like I said, a drunk voicemail song.
Yeah, I love her vocals on this.
Right,
song.
Everybody does, and it's like, if you're like a voice major and you're talking about technical, it's like, oh my god. But no, it's more than that.
Sounds good.
It's more than that.
Care if it's correct.
It's more about the power behind it.
Yeah, for sure. Oh,
I didn't even.
It.
Whenever I listened to it, I didn't even think like, oh, this is so incorrect. And I was originally a voice major here at Slippery Rock. Like, my initial reaction was, oh my god, this is so powerful. And then I read later, oh yeah, she actually had drank like a ton of whiskey before she wrote and recorded this in one night, at like early hours of the morning. Insane. Just ugh. She's so cool. Rihanna's awesome.
True.
Anywho, so we have that one, and then after that we have Goodnight Gotham, which I usually ended my listening of this album at higher. I realized I'd never really listened to Goodnight Gotham that much.
Was it Goodnight Gotham?
Oh no, it's Close to You. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Goodnight Gotham is actually on the deluxe edition. We would listen to that, but we don't have time. There's no way. Close to You. Crap, I even had a note about Goodnight Gotham. Jeez. First show error. I'm just kidding. We've been screwing up all night. It's our first show. It's fine. But yeah. Last song in the album is Close to You. Very, very in the same boat of Higher and Never Ending. Very simplistic. Very beautiful. Very emotional. Very attention-grabbing. Just a perfect closer for this album as a whole. For sort of so we save on time, we're just going to listen to both of those right now. So here's Higher and then Close to You, and then we'll try and give some last initial reaction and thoughts on the album as a whole once we're done with those. So here's Higher. Just a perfect ending to a near perfect album. I don't know. I would even say perfect album. It's crazy to call a album a perfect album. Like, call it a 10 out of 10. But honestly, when you're talking about that level of how good it is, usually I'm like, well, would I change anything? And it's like, no, I wouldn't. I would change nothing about that album.
I would make Work an interlude.
That's right. We did say that.
That's my only thing.
Okay, so like 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I would give it an 8.5 or 9.
Yeah, I was initially 9, but now it's like, after listening to it all the way through and being able to actually out loud talk about all this stuff, it increases my love for it.
Aw.
That's why I'm so excited that we're doing this. This is literally my favorite thing that I've ever done. Like, I'm so excited that we're able to do this. Just because this is crap that I've always like thought, and I've always like, you know, but when you say it out loud, it materializes, and you're able to feed off of each other and dive deeper into it. So it makes it so much better. Obviously, I loved going over this album. Tonight I was able to discuss things about this album I never really thought before, and it increases my love. But it also makes me so excited for other albums that mean more to me than this album does. Not that this album isn't very spectacular and means a lot to me, but, you know, we both have favorite albums. And when we talk about them on here, it's going to be special. We both are with that.
Can we do my favorite album?
What's that?
Can we do my favorite album? Mansions?
Mansions?
Yeah.
We may at some point. I think we will, actually. Actually, we will. We will, for sure, at some point. We'll do it.
Listen, everyone.
Honestly.
If you haven't listened to it, listen to it. I'm serious.
It's not, because that's another one where it's not your typical one you'd think of. But honestly, there's a lot you could talk about with it.
Yeah.
There's like there's that one song that's just like straight poetry.
Yeah. It's called I'm Thinking About Horses.
Yeah. there's a lot of layers to that album, honestly.
Oh, absolutely.
In addition to there being some bangers.
Yeah.
I think
it's Mike Posner and Black Bear.
Yeah. So
nobody would think that.
You wouldn't expect it, but honestly, I was very impressed when I actually listened to it, like sat down and listened to it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. I think we will. We will do it at some point. Probably not immediately, but like definitely before the semester's over.
Awesome.
But yeah, we listened to every track on Anti by Rihanna, and we talked about them a lot. Yeah, but we're going to talk a little bit more about it. So obviously we went over how we feel about it. We went over a lot of different stuff. I'll tell you what, Sam, why don't you give me your, you know, overall final thoughts now that we've gotten all the way through everything.
Oh, man.
Some stuff that you didn't think of before that now you're like, whoa. Some tracks that maybe, you know, just anything. Just talk for a while.
Okay, wow, no pressure. Just talk for a while.
That is no pressure. Literally,
come on.
You can say anything.
I can say anything, are you sure? Just kidding.
Listen, you can't say or
okay.
or but anything other than that you can say.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I guess like I don't have a lot more to say than what I said at the beginning. Is just like it's a totally different thing from what Rihanna normally does. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Rihanna's other albums. Like, this is the album that got me to...
That's fair.
It was popular music. I was like in middle school. It was like, oh yeah, Rihanna. I love Rihanna.
But I keep repeating myself whenever I say that this is so different. Like, not that her old stuff was bad, but we're not talking about her older albums like they're near perfect albums in the way that we're talking about this one. Like,
they're solid, but like I didn't love them, and I love Anti.
The closest thing I can think of is the album where I don't even remember the title. The album where she had red hair.
Okay, yeah, I can picture the album cover.
That's my second favorite album of hers, but it's nowhere close to this. Yeah, Loud.
That's her. 2010.
Yeah,
her first one.
It's nowhere close to this, even remote. It's not on the same planet as this. Yeah. Like, it had bangers. It had some good songs. It probably had like 13 songs. 5 of them were awesome. But that's it.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near. The level of maturity is just like, I keep using this word, overwhelming. Anywho, continue. I'm sorry.
Wow, where did I leave off? Oh, I was just...
We're just talking. You can go wherever you want with this.
True.
We just talked for 2.5 hours. 3 hours almost. It's 38. God damn.
Oh no.
See, it's a good thing we go this late, because then there's no show after us, so we can just go. If we wanted to go until 6 a.m.
I don't want to go till 6 a.m. But
are you sure? Are you sure? It sounds like fun.
Oh my god.
I was actually thinking about this. I probably shouldn't even go over this right now because we're still recording and we're still on air. But screw it. Nobody's going to listen to this entire thing that we post. Anywho, Wouldn't it be fun if... So, like, last year, the end of last semester, the famous Joe Rossi, don't remember how you pronounce his name. I only met him for a month. I'm sorry if I got his name wrong. I don't 100% remember. I think it was DJ Deathstorm was his DJ name.
Wow.
Very nice man. I can't remember his name. Anywho.
DJ Deathstorm.
That might be it. I might be wrong, though. He famously, last semester, did, I forget what it was called, but I was going to do a show at night where I did all vinyl, and I had to reschedule because he was like, I'm sorry, I'm going. Because he was a senior, and he was already in here and was like, even though I had scheduled, he was like, I'm sorry, I'm setting up. Like, can you do it some other time? And I was like, he didn't even ask, but I'm not mad about it because, especially because of what he did. He took that time, and he started at 10 p.m. He played metal music from 10 p.m. on like a Tuesday night, I think, till 10 in the morning.
No way. For real?
I am not kidding you. And this was finals week.
Wow.
This dude is insane.
Let's do it. Finals week.
I'm saying, what if we did something where we talked about an album that was so universally praised and had so many layers to it, where we literally sit here and talk about it? Not 12 hours. I think 12 is way too long. We'll be...
I want to go to sleep before the sun comes up, maybe.
Right. Yeah. But even going like midnight to 6, I feel like that's fair.
That'd be crazy.
Because it's one thing if you're playing music, but it's one thing if you're talking forever, which is basically what we've done. Anywho, we're still recording a show, and this is insanely off topic, but that's an idea we need to think about. Back to the idea of Rihanna. I do agree. I feel like we are both on the same page in terms of how we think of this. Where
back to Rihanna. I agree.
Yeah.
Rihanna. Yes.
We both agree that, what did I say earlier? Art is beautiful. Anti is beautiful. Rihanna is beautiful. Accurate.
Rihanna is art.
Rihanna is art. She's a very, very, very pretty lady.
Amazing.
But yeah. I mean, there's not much more we can say. We've said it all. We've talked forever. I apologize if there's anybody who actually listens to this entire thing. I don't think there will be anyone who doesn't like skip around a bit. But if there are...
My mom said she wanted to listen to it, but I don't think she's gonna.
If your mom listens to this entire thing without skipping, that will be amazing.
You know, I wouldn't put it past her.
Oh, gosh. Honestly, I can think of family members who might listen to this thing all the way through. Mainly my grandparents.
Aww.
My grandma, definitely. My grandma's going to listen to this thing all the way through, which is crazy. But I wouldn't put it past her. Love you, Grandma. Yeah, tell your parents and your grandparents you love them. That's always important. Anywho, yeah, just repeating what we said. It's insane that, you know, if you think of Rihanna as a person in terms of pop culture, specifically, not even music, just pop culture, you know, you think, Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, Beyonce, you know, Drake. You just throw names out there of really celebrities. Taylor Swift. They're all musicians. But they're like, at one side of the coin, they're musicians. On the other side, they're celebrities. There's more
like,
surrounding.
Even almost like celebrity first, musician second, when you think about them.
Right. Right. A lot of them are. And she's very much so... She's so one with the pop genre. And has such a career for herself that really lasts a long time. Like, what year did Pond to Replay come out? That was her first hit. It feels like forever ago. She's been here a while. Anywho. So when you think of a person in that capacity, and that's what makes this album special more than any other album we may do for the rest of the show's history. Like, definitely different from all the rock albums, like doing Hot Fuss next week and all the other rock albums and rap albums, like specific rap albums, not necessarily, but the thing that makes this one so different is that when you think about that type of icon, like in terms of pop culture as a whole, for that type of person to not only make a near perfect album, as we've discussed, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
There's very little bad things you can say about it. You have a tweak, but nothing bad.
Yeah, no, nothing bad.
Bad. For somebody to make that and for it to go virtually unnoticed and unappreciated. Listen, people like this album, obviously. It won our Twitter poll.
Yeah.
Have you heard anybody say that this is like the best album to come out in the past like 3 years?
I don't think so.
No. Nobody talks about it in that light, myself included. I never talk about it in that way.
Yeah.
I have a long history of, since this album came out, of loving this album so much. And yet nobody talks about it like that. That's what makes it so special, is because that's the whole point. It wasn't her intention. She didn't, again, I don't remember, I turned off my computer, so I can't pull up the exact quote that I read earlier. But basically, paraphrasing, it said, I didn't know how people would receive this, and I didn't care.
Yeah.
You get that. You understand that the second you start listening to the album, is that she didn't care. And the result is near perfection. It's so good.
It just really shows that this is like her, it's natural for her.
Right.
Doing what she does, and that's amazing.
I think once you reach a certain level of popularity and you get to that sort of like pop culture icon that we were talking about earlier with, like, Taylor Swift, Justin Bieber, all those type of people, I think people forget, like, okay, even if you are, riding a wave, or even if you're making music that fundamentally, professors are going to puke at and just everybody talks garbage on it, fundamentally, this is a passion.
Yeah.
This is something that you are taking seriously. You wouldn't put in the time otherwise. Even people who like sort of downplay that side of it. Most notably, like Lil Yachty has been quoted multiple times saying that he doesn't really care about music. It's more of creating a brand for himself. Basically, he just wants to make money.
Yeah.
Even that aspect of it, even though he will not recognize it and he will not admit it, guess what? It's still a passion. Just because you don't acknowledge it doesn't mean it's not. You are spending.
Yeah, why would you do it?
Right.
If it's not.
Well, just for the impact, you're spending so much time and effort creating an art. You're creating an art.
Yeah.
You can't. So even if you say, "Oh, it's," which Rihanna would never say this. This is more of going off of the whole Lil Yachty thing. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't acknowledge that that's an important aspect of your life, guess what? It still is.
Yeah.
It's your life. It's your job. So, going back to what I originally was meaning by this point, people forget that these, icons, these people that we put on pedestals, who, we follow them on all these mediums of social media, and we sometimes pay attention to everything but their actual music. The reason for all of that is still the music.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the pop genre, you can say whatever you want about it. It's still music. The musicians are still making music, and that is their primary goal and what their life is about.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah, and I always hate when people are like, oh, that's like... I don't know. I can't even think of examples, but like
So-
some people are just like, oh, well, that's not, it's not real music. They're just like,
listen,
oh, it's generic.
That's
blah,
a
blah,
whole
blah.
that's a whole different argument for another day. That is literally, if you say this isn't real music, I will punch you in the face. Literally, it's garbage. I hate. There are a lot of genres of music I do not like. I would never say that a certain type of music is not real music. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but where I was going with that, like
it doesn't make
literally,
sense.
it's all art, whether you like it or not.
But anywho, what I was getting back to, I had a really good point. I don't want to get away from it. Everybody forgets that these people are musicians. This is why they do it. They're trying to make something. So again, when she talks about the whole idea of her album being called Anti, and the entire message of her album, and especially with the sound and just everything she's doing with it, she's going against the grain to put the artistic side of it first. Like, I feel like most pop artists are not putting the art side of it first when they're making music. And she entirely goes against the idea of that she's used in previous albums and what other people are doing in continuing albums, where she is putting that first and that last. That's all she cares about. And this is the result. To where really she's doing something that everybody is doing at some level when they're making music. But this is all she cares about. That's all she wants to do. And the result is overwhelmingly good. And I can't stress it enough. Nobody talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nobody discusses it. Like, people think it's good. It's a 7 out of 10, like, from a lot of critics. It's just interesting for somebody to take such a step back. And I don't know. I don't like using the phrase bringing it back to like the roots of making music.
Yeah.
Because that isn't an accurate description of the album in terms of how it was made. There's a lot of EDM elements that would go against that phrase in this album. But that's honestly, in my opinion, what she's doing.
Yeah.
There are just so many different ways, I guess, you can interpret it as a whole. So many different angles. It's such a melting pot of themes, of ideas, of sounds on this album. So it's almost like any opinion you have of it, like in terms of it, why it's good. You're accurate.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. I agree.
So yeah, I hope somewhere in my rambling you got some sort of point. If not, I apologize. We'll try and keep it on focus in future. So listen, we went through an entire show. Our first show.
In 2 hours and 52 minutes.
Yeah, we did it at 150% of the time we were expecting. But hey, we did it.
True.
Inaugural show.
Snaps for us.
So, before we finish, and I know if you're still listening, you're tired of hearing our voices. I'm certainly tired of hearing my voice. Believe it or not, for how much I've talked. Before we go, let's take a second and sort of talk about I don't know, just this show as a whole.
Okay.
Going forward, based off of what we've done so far, how do you feel about continuing to do this every week? What makes you excited to do it? What makes you not want to cut your ears off from having to listen to me talk forever and give useless points and just strangle me from being so annoying about music?
No. I literally like analyzing things. That's enjoyable for me. And like, I don't know, like I'm like a history major, so like reading texts and analyzing them, discussing them is enjoyable for me. And then the same thing with music. You know, it's just, I don't know, it's just fun to talk about, listen. You know, I like hearing new perspectives, and I like giving perspectives.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. This is something it genuinely means so much to me that I'm able to do this. This is something that I feel like, even though I've only recently, thought of the actual idea, this is something that in the back of my head I've wanted to materialize and do for a long time. And literally the fact that you were intrigued and excited to come in and do it with me means so much. Mm-hmm. Because, yeah, this is just something that I've always listened to music in the context of albums more so. I mean, I do listen to, songs, just individual songs, but I listen to albums more. And I enjoy thinking about this, and I enjoy talking about this. And usually when I do that, it's usually with other friends who we're all usually inebriated, and they're just like, yeah, whatever, yeah. But they are tired of listening to me talk the same thing forever. So more so than me being able to talk into a microphone and talk to people on air and people listening online, this is us having a conversation.
True.
And the fact that we're able to do that at itself is incredible to me. And I appreciate so much.
Aww.
And it allows me the ability to sort of put structure to it. I mean, we rambled a lot and we went over time, and there was no structure to it whatsoever. But we didn't just go off on tangents about other subjects outside of music. Mm-hmm. We put a structure around it. And now I can sort of keep this. So it's very special. Excuse me. And I thank you for making this. This is very much like a dream of mine. Aww. And you've very much made it come true. So I appreciate you allowing me to do this and you coming in and doing this with me.
Of course. I'm glad to be here.
And I'm very, very excited to do this in the future.
Woo, me too.
Because, yeah, it's the Random Album Review Show. We can talk about anything. We can talk about, a Swahili album. Or,
We could.
We could talk about, Lil Xan. Or, I don't know, banjo.
Banjo. Talk about... Oh, my gosh. Trying to think of random stuff. John Philip Sousa.
I'm down to listen to some Sousa.
Yeah, Stars and Stripes Forever.
Yeah. Oh, I hate that I am notorious for not liking ensembles, yet I have at certain points in my life played at least 5 Sousa songs and know them. Where if they started playing on air right now, I would straight up know the next part of the melody.
No, I'd be singing every part. No, listen.
Oh my god, when I the
Sousa marches slap. They slap.
They do slap. A Sousa march plays in Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh, and I went to growing up with diabetes, and it plays in this. There's this, I don't know, train set. And it's it's carnival based, I think. It's a themed train set. Anywho, it plays that one part of Sousa. And it literally is, whenever it does, it's in my brain. It's just absolutely non-stop. I can't not pay attention to it. Anywho, this was our random album review of John Philip Sousa. Now,
Yeah.
So
Tune in
yeah,
next week to hear exclusively John Philip Sousa marches.
absolutely.
I am totally kidding. Please listen.
No, so it's 12:58. I think we should wrap it up because we're an hour over.
True.
So yeah, we don't even have to say anymore. We've given our thoughts on Anti. You can listen to all that. Thank you so much for being here, Sam.
Of course.
Thanks for chilling with me. Thank you to anybody listening. Who knows? Yeah, thank you for being here. I appreciate. Thank you to everybody at WSRU for allowing me to do this. Thank you to our lovely training director, Mandizzle. She initially proposed the idea of doing something similar to this. And when I brought up the idea of sort of taking your idea and expanding upon it, she 100% gave me the green light. And that means the world to me. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mandizzle.
Woo.
We are going to wrap it up here and call it quits, and then we're going to turn on the automation for you radio listeners. So we are going to sign off here without further ado.
Don't forget to register to vote, everybody. The deadline
Absolutely.
for Pennsylvania is October 9th. You can do it online.
Good plug. Good PSA right there. Yeah, register to vote. Don't be stupid.
Super important.
That all you people complain and don't vote, y'all make me sick. Y'all know what happened last time you didn't vote. We were not even going to say it.
No, we're not.
Go vote! You have been listening to 88.1 FM WSRU Slippery Rock. We are owned by the Student Government Association of Slippery Rock University. WSRU is completely run by students of SRU, operating at a rocking 100 watts of power at 88.1 on the FM dial. This is Xiao Pao and DJ Burkhouse. She's not on the mic right now, otherwise she should have said that. Hoping you'll tune into the best music college has to offer right here on 88.1 FM WSRU, the voice of the rock.